Kathryn E. Stoner's Russia Resurrected, Its Power and Purpose in a New Global Order, uh, was a far better book than I anticipated it being. I went into this book not knowing what to expect, but I found that it addressed many of the questions and challenges I face as a Ukrainian activist from the perspective of those who are perhaps less sensitive to Russia's security concerns than myself. Or, I'm sorry, people who are perhaps more sensitive to Russia's security concerns than myself. The most important of these issues is the level of threat that NATO posed to Russia, and what course of actions Russia took in response, and how definite or predetermined was their responses. George Brennan, I think his name was, predicted that if NATO continued their trajectory, that Russia would have no choice but to respond. I argue otherwise, and Stoner argues otherwise. Stoner argues that Russia's geopolitical warfare was in no way determined, nor was it the result of U.S. imposing any burdens on Russia. Quite the contrary, while there were moments of disagreement, the motives of Russia's actions are largely the result of Russia's desire for a great power status and Putin's admiration for his own country's legacy. What Putin's actions are actions done in desperation, but they are not actions done in fear. That's different. The book was written in 2022. The book was written, not in 2022, but before the 2022 full-scale invasion, which in many ways makes it much better. It shows how even before Russia had fully invaded Ukraine, its actions were not following the realist trajectory that many project on it. In the Soviet era, there may have been a concern for a balance of great powers in order to avoid mutually assured destruction. But Putin, as someone who saw the USSR collapse, views the situation a bit differently. In addition to this, Kathryn Stoner also answers the question concerning Putin's level of power. Many have theorized that Russia has a poor hand that it deals well. Stoner instead argues that Russia has a hand that is actually quite strong, only that it's strong in ways that we do not detect. While Russia is not a superpower on par with the US or China, it is in fact a global power. It manages this by controlling economic resources, energy, and foreign political regimes. For its military, while it's often said they spend significantly less, they have some of the best aviation systems. And while they spend less on their military, they have a greater value for their price. When comparing weapons and not the price of the weapons, Russia is far more even-handed. While Russia acts as though their actions are predetermined by history, geography, and culture, Stoner reveals this to be more or less an excuse. There are numerous countries with the same kind of population or economy of that of Russia that are far more vulnerable and less interested in geopolitical affairs. However, Russia maintains a geopolitical status not out of fear of being attacked, but out of fear of not being feared, or out of fear of not being respected as a threat. Examples of policies that reflect this can be seen in Russia's foreign military. There is no direct interest for Russia to be defending Syria or propping up Maduro in Venezuela. Yet Russia has troops placed in areas as far away as Africa and holds on to Syria and Latin American influences. Rather than serving economic boosters for the Russian Federation, these serve examples of Russia being willing to intervene to maintain influence. This, unfortunately, I believe, is the driving force for most of Russia's actions, maintaining influence. I do recommend this book. I think it examines the psychology of the Russian Federation far better than a lot of other books that just kind of focus on the wealth of Russia, or they focus on the history. This gives you an actual psychological evaluation, not from one where it's presenting Russia as defensive, as you'll get from, say, Jonathan Haslan or Scott Horton, but one which sees Russia as a bit paranoid, but also a bit overly assertive and willing to dominate because it wishes to assert itself. And in the end, thank you for listening. I wish you all well. God bless.